It's great to be joined by Bill Scher, senior writer at Campaign for America's Future and contributing editor at Politico. We're going to walk through what's going on with the Republican primary, the Democratic primary, Bill's call for a particular Democratic vice presidential candidate. But Bill, we'll start with the Republican race. What's your sense now of 1237, the number required in terms of delegates to secure the nomination on the Republican side? I'm not thinking Trump is going to achieve this before the convention in Cleveland.
I mean, based on where he currently stands, he would get close, but not all the way there.
Right.
Maybe he'd be, 95% of the majority that he would need if current patterns hold. And for the most part, current patterns have held. There hasn't really been, momentum shifts. You can kind of predict where things stand demographically. But Trump is such a weird character. I thought he was going to have fizzled a long time ago, and that hasn't been the case. But maybe, there's such a never Trump movement forming that it finally bears fruit. But assuming we're where we are, he'd get close, and then the question becomes, is the Republican Party establishment committed to stopping him or not? Because if he is short, they could. They're also a contingent of unbound delegates. The Republicans don't have super delegates the way Democrats do, but there'll be a good number of delegates that won't be legally bound to a candidate, either because their state didn't have a presidential preference vote. There are a couple states like that, like Colorado and North Dakota, or the candidates who have dropped out, like Rubio and Bush. They still have some delegates. They would be free in most cases to do what they wanted to do. You could organize those folks to join with the Cruz and Kasich delegates and block Trump ballot after ballot if you had the stomach for it, because Trump is going to say, if you don't give it to me because I have the most delegates, my people are going to start riots. So you have to be willing to weather that kind of assault if you are committed to not having Trump be the face of your party. All evidence to date suggests that they don't have the stomach for that. I mean, I would have thought they would a few months ago, but they seem to not. There are certainly pockets of never Trump, particularly among conservative writers. You don't see a lot of elected officials saying they'll go to the mat to stop Trump.
Yeah, and there's also a lot of just weird, stories that could impact this. Just in the last few hours, Trump's campaign manager, Corey Lewandowski, was arrested and charged with assault of a journalist. Who knows what impact that might have? There's this simmering story, this allegation of Ted Cruz having 5 affairs, which is sort of simmering. It's not clear if that's going to go anywhere. It's anything could happen still in the time remaining that could just change the dynamic from the point of view of the voters, aside from the Republican establishment, which might do who knows what at the convention.
But even if there was a big voter shift, I think Trump's lead is big enough. I mean, it's not enormous, but big enough that it would be pretty hard for him to be overtaken. I mean, we've already had about 32 states, so there's not a lot of time to actually overtake his lead. The size of his plurality might be not as big as he would like, but if he has the most, he's going to declare, I have the most, therefore I should get it. And that violates tradition. The rules are you need a majority, not a plurality. You have to earn your delegates. And there are a lot of delegates out there that may not be Trump loyalists, even if they are assigned to Trump in the first round, because Trump is not necessarily adept at the delegate allocation insider game. But again, what's going to come down to is, does the Republican Party have the will to say Trump is anathema to Republican values, to conservative principles, to American values? We can't let him tar our party with his bigotry and his hatred, and we will do whatever it takes to stop him. I think it's what they should do. I have no evidence that they actually have the spine to do that.
So we're going to start shifting into the conversation about Hillary versus Bernie. But in order to do that, my sort of dream scenario has been that Trump stays in this thing, but doesn't get the delegates he needs. The Republican establishment hands this nomination to somebody else at the convention. Trump goes haywire, runs as a third-party candidate, practically speaking, handing the November election to the Democratic candidate. What do you think about that scenario? Is that the dream scenario for someone who wants either Hillary or Bernie Sanders to be the next president?
Well, I mean, I think at this stage, I mean, Trump loses by double digits to both Hillary and Bernie. Um, if it was someone like Cruz, even though he polls relatively better right now, that probably would not sustain in a general. He's way outside the mainstream for most Americans. The party is going to be divided one way or another, whether Trump is or is not the nominee at this point, because of the amount of support that Trump does have, the amount of antipathy Trump engenders. So things look good for Democrats, no matter how you slice it. I do think, and I've written this in the past, if Trump runs third party, and even if Trump as the general election Republican nominee, he's going to run a different campaign than he runs right now. He is not moored to any ideological orthodoxy. He's not moored to what he said 10 minutes ago. He is a complete 100% political pandering opportunist. This notion that he's some sort of tell like it is straight talker is total bunk. He will say whatever he wants to say at any given second. So I'm sure he will run very hard to win Democratic votes and left-leaning independents in a general election, whether he's a Republican or a third party. I don't think he'll be terribly successful, but I think he'll get something. And so you can't assume that what he takes as a third-party candidate is going to be solely on the Republican side. He might be more like a Ross Perot, which, contrary to conventional wisdom, actually drew evenly from both parties.
So let's now talk about Bernie versus Hillary. Every time I'm almost ready to say it's basically over for Bernie, he starts winning, and he won 5 of the last 6 contests, and every indication that he does still have momentum, although the numbers still do favor Hillary Clinton. You, for a while, have been saying the math is ultimately not going to favor Bernie Sanders. What do you make of how long this has gone and the number of wins he's achieved?
Well, I also said soon after New Hampshire that we see that there's enough Bernie support and enough Bernie resources that he would stay in the race till the end and continue to collect delegates. So I thought it was pretty clear after New Hampshire that he wasn't going to go away.
Yeah.
But yes, the math does strongly suggest he can't actually overtake Hillary in terms of pledged delegates. I think NPR just laid out. They crushed all the numbers. So this is what it would take for Bernie to overtake Hillary in the pledged delegates. I'm not even talking supers. I don't think we should talk about supers at this stage of the game. In the pledged delegates, to overtake her by just 2 delegates, he would have to win 16 of the next 18 contests. I mean, there's only 18 left, 18 states, not counting the territories and whatnot. 16 of 18, and at least 55% in big states like New York and California, and bigger margins in the smaller states. I mean, that's literally unprecedented. There has never been a fourth quarter comeback of a presidential candidate in the modern presidential primary season. Candidates that build up early leads, there's often some March surprises. There are often bumps in the road, but to have that bump in the road actually turn into a complete reversal of the trajectory, that literally never happens. So it'd be hard to assume Bernie is going to break history here, especially because the kinds of states that he does win there are not many of those around the corner. 10 of Bernie's 14 wins are caucus states. And most of those caucus states are small population, almost totally white states. There's a piece that came out after he won Alaska, Hawaii, and Washington State. I saw the Huffington Post saying Bernie just won three of the most diverse states in the country.
Yeah,
that is barely technically true because they're heavy with Asian and Pacific Islander voters. He still hasn't proven he can win in states with heavy African American populations and Latino populations. And those are the kind of states like New York, Pennsylvania, Maryland, California, and the not caucus states, big population, big primary states. That's going to be really hard for him to do in the numbers he would need.
All right, so let's, for the little time we have left, talk about if indeed Hillary Clinton is the Democratic nominee. You've written a piece suggesting that Al Franken should be her vice presidential candidate. That may come as a surprise to some people who see the likes of Bill O'Reilly and so many others ridicule Al Franken. Do you think, or why do you think that would be a good choice for Hillary Clinton?
Okay, assuming it's Clinton versus Trump, which is I think that's pretty much the only scenario where this makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
there obviously is a very large Bernie constituency out there. He has shown that there is a significant ideological gulf in the party, really driven by a generational divide. And so you have a lot of younger voters who really don't have a lot of long-term ties to Hillary, don't have see her increasingly as a tool of Wall Street and a warmonger. They're going to be hard to bring along. I mean, maybe a Trump nominee scares him straight, and that's enough to bring him in. But you don't want to necessarily, assume that. So who can you pick to bridge that gap? Probably not Sanders himself, because or Senator Elizabeth Warren, who would be the most obvious choices, because Hillary would be concerned they wouldn't always echo her messages, and they would not want to be Hillary surrogates and give up their own independence. They have plenty of influence and power, speaking their own mind all the time. They couldn't do that as vice president. So I would not assume them. Next obvious person is Sherrod Brown, senator from Ohio, very populist, longtime populist. Bernie people would certainly like him, and he's in Ohio, key swing state. However, Governor Kasich is from Ohio, and under Ohio rules, that Republican governor would replace Sherrod Brown if he became vice president, and the Senate might be right on the edge. You don't have necessarily have a cushion to give up one seat, so that makes him dangerous. So go down the list of how many people out there could really bridge the populist and the Democratic establishment. I won't do it all right now. I do it in my article in Politico. But Al Franken is a guy that has a foot in both camps. Early Hillary endorser, but ran the most populist reelection campaign of 2014 and won by 10 points. A leader on net neutrality, busted up the Comcast-Time Warner merger. And as an added bonus, you're going up against Donald Trump, most likely, a madhouse of unpredictability, coarse broadsides raining down on you of the lengths you've never seen. Al Franken has had decades of experience of dealing with exactly that kind of person, and can do it in a way where it's not like a Rubio going into the gutter situation. He can do it with a bit of class, a bit of elegance, a wryness, and save Hillary from having to deal with that herself. Franken could be a buffer for her.
Wow. Well, you really said it all today, Bill. That food for thought, I think, understatement of the day. Al Franken. We'll link to your piece in Politico to make sure everybody can check it out and see the fine minutia of your reasoning on this. We've been speaking with Bill Scher, Campaign for America's Future, of course, Politico. Bill, thank you as always.
My pleasure.